Welcome to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast dedicated to people who want to speak more as a way to build their income and grow their business. Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. I'm your host, Jane Hackinson. One of the things that I'm really lucky to have in my 30-year span in the speaking business is relationships with super cool people, including Speakers Bureau agents and owners. Because I've worked under the roof of a bureau for 6 years in Texas, I understand the nuances, and that allows me to help my clients partner even better with bureaus. If you're a speaker who's new to the profession, take a look at Chapter 6 in the Wealthy Speaker 2.0. It's all about how to know when you're ready to start partnering with bureaus and how to really get some inroads. Today, we're going to be talking about how to make it easy for speakers bureaus to book you. And today's podcast is sponsored by the Wealthy Speaker Focus 40 session. That's a 40-minute private coaching session with me via Skype, Zoom, or by phone, and it allows you to map out your strategy. We have a brief assessment that you'll fill out ahead of time. That's going to give me a snapshot of your business. And then we'll meet and kind of walk through all of your most pressing needs. That is at a price that you'll not see in my coaching. It's $347. I know that low price might surprise you, but it is a one-time thing. So come on over to speakerlauncher.com and click on the private coaching button, and you'll see the link to Focus 40 session. Now, today, I'm thrilled to be talking about how to make it easy for speakers to book you. My special guest expert is the owner of a hot new bureau that's specializing in fresh faces. Her name, and I just know I'm going to get your last name wrong, is Gina Davilla. Gina, pronounce your name properly, please. That's not right. I know I didn't do it right. You say it.
It's Gina Davilla. Gina Davilla. Thank you, Jane.
I'm trying. You know I'm trying. Congratulations.
Yes, I appreciate
it. Congratulations on this exciting new time in your business. Why do you think it's important to focus on fresh faces?
Well, very simply, that's what meeting planners want. Meeting planners are facing changes in the meeting industry, just like everybody else in the meeting industry. And any speaker who is up and coming, who's serious about telling a story, serious about a message that is going to change the way audience participants feel about themselves or change their habits or their attitudes, that's always a very, very valuable service in the industry. And really that should be what the speaking business is about. That's what speakers should be doing. They should be honing their craft and telling their story in such a way that their goal is to make a difference in people's lives. And so that's what meeting planners want. They want a new story. They want something different. They want something that's relevant and current to what's going on in our society, whether that be nationally or globally. And everybody wants a fresh story. So there's plenty of opportunity for fresh faces. And one of the things I enjoy is discovering those fresh faces and discovering those fresh stories and fresh takes.
Fabulous. Let me just read everybody your proper bio here so they have a little bit of a background. Gina is the owner of the Keynote Shop Speakers Bureau. It's out of Austin, Texas. She has an extensive background in marketing, public relations, and event management from her work as a corporate marketing executive, marketing consultant for the speaking industry, and former sales agent for one of the oldest bureaus in the U.S. Gina enjoys the challenge of matching the perfect speaker for her clients, and she's always excited to meet the new great thought leader. So let's talk a little bit. You and I probably first met back when you were doing the same job that I did. I was probably with Vince Vicente at the time and as a business manager, and you were managing Billy Riggs' career for many, many moons.
Actually, that's almost true. I will tell you that you were my mentor, and one of the things that I learned most quickly from in this business was reading the original Wealthy Speaker.
Oh.
You had already left Vince, and you were on your own, and I was learning the ropes in the industry, trying to figure out how to best position Billy Riggs, and I stumbled upon and covet and still have the original Wealthy Speaker, and it was chock full of information. And at that point, I decided this is the person who I need to know in this business. So
Aw.
that's how it all came to be. Yeah.
That is so nice. You went on from there, and thank you. You went on from there, and you went to work, which was formerly known as Five Star Speakers Bureaus for Red Propeller, and that gave you a bird's eye view of things like showcases and the kind of the deep dive into the world of speakers bureaus. Talk a little bit about kind of what you walked away from that situation with.
Well, I was very, very fortunate to have an opportunity to work with Red Propeller Speakers Bureau and Miss Nancy Lauterbach, who retired this year. She is another one of the icons in the business that I look up to, and I've always said that when I grow up, I want to be like that person. Five Star, when it was founded, was founded back in the late 80s, early 90s, back in the day when there were still libraries full of VHS video and printed speaker one sheets. And everybody used a Rolodex. And so that was sort of I guess, a whole different time in the speaker bureau world. But Nancy is a master at relationship building, and they taught me so much. And Five Star is one of the only speakers bureaus that did speaker showcases across the nation.
And they still do. And they still do the showcases at Red Propeller. So
and they still do the showcases at Red Propeller. And the one thing I learned about that is that that is a really, really good way to get to know speakers firsthand, to see them in a way that you probably wouldn't be able to otherwise. It's also a really good way to serve the meeting planner community and to help build relationships. So I feel very fortunate to have been able to be a part of that. It definitely is a huge value. And I know there are some other speakers bureaus who also do showcases, maybe just not to the extent that Red Propeller is doing them. So,
they definitely had the, they were one of the pioneers in that. And being able to have that face-to-face meet from a bureau agent perspective, you could go your whole career without ever meeting your clients face-to-face unless you do events like that. And I think that those are terrific. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the best practices. No doubt, Gina, you already have a flood of speakers coming at you, and that's got to become a system for you to kind of sort through and figure out who to connect with and who to pass on. They're not ready. What would you say are some of the best practices for speakers who want to start getting booked by bureaus?
Well, honestly, I think sometimes speakers tend to want to overthink what's important, or maybe they sort of jump the gun on what's important. But I will tell you that there are a couple of things, 2 or 3 things that to me are very fundamental, but things that I'm finding a lot of new speakers tend to overlook. And, one of the things that's just really simple is make it easy for yourself to be found. Put your phone number on your website. I cannot tell you.
Now I know what you're talking about. That's one of my pet
I cannot tell you how many times a week I'm looking at a speaker and I always go to the speaker website. That's my first order of business.
Sure.
That said, website is very important.
Right.
But I go there and there's no phone number to be found. And so what's left is you've got to go in and you've got to fill out the response form. Well, if you're an agent and you've got a client on the other end who's about to go into a board meeting to take a look at a speaker that you've kind of already talked about, or that they've called you and said, hey, can you source this speaker for me? You really, as an agent, don't want to really need to do that. You need to be able to be accessible. So that's sort of a fundamental thing, but it's just extremely, extremely important. Be accessible. The other thing, I guess, is if, and there are speakers who say, well, I don't want to put my phone number on the website because I'm going to get all these spam calls and all that stuff. And to that, I would say, okay, fine. If that's the case, then hire somebody or have a system set up so that you are back in touch with that agent inside of an hour. Very important. Again, I actually have some seasoned speakers who are sometimes 4 to 5 hours or maybe even a day to respond. And that's a really dangerous predicament to be in if you're a speaker, because you have to realize that you're probably not the only speaker being considered. So make it easy for yourself to be found. I guess the next thing would be, if as a new speaker, take the time to understand how bureaus work. If you're going to call on bureaus or you want to be involved with bureaus, really kind of understand the difference between a bureau and an agency. I mean, there's two different genres of business now representing speakers. There's the full service speakers bureau, which is what my bureau is. But then there's also those speaker agencies that manage a handful of speakers. What a speaker agency's mission is totally different than what a speaker's bureau mission is.
So let's make that really simple for people. A speakers bureau is working directly with the clients to book speakers. Sometimes the bureau will have some exclusive speakers, but you're mostly going to be dealing with people on a non-exclusive basis. And that's probably not even where you're headed, right, Gina, in terms of exclusivity. But there are some bureaus who have a few exclusives, but that's in terms of the norm. A speakers bureau is going out there and serving the needs of corporations and associations and people who want to bring in speakers, and they're the mediator. They will match up a speaker with an event.
Right, exactly. And to that extent, we scour the entire universe of speakers. So we're not just focusing, our mission is not to promote any one particular speaker, because we're not managing that speaker. Our mission is to scour the universe, whether it be an agency that happens to have an exclusive with that speaker, or that speaker just happens to be in somebody's database, or we find them on LinkedIn. There's all kinds of different sources where we go to source speakers, including organizations like you who happen to have some new faces.
Sure.
So our database is the entire universe of speakers versus what I call an agency, if you will, that holds only exclusives, and their mission is to promote the speakers that they hold exclusives with. And I think that's kind of an important relationship for new speakers to understand, because I know when I first started in this business, my database included anybody who booked speakers, and I soon realized that it was a pointless call to call an agency that didn't represent my speaker. Right. So that was a learning point for me. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's just make sure that we get some things down on paper here for those who are listening. And if you are listening in your car, hopefully you'll make some voice notes or something. Make it easy for them to communicate with you quickly. I think speakers may not understand the need for urgency, that you have a client that you talk to them in the morning, and this afternoon you want to put in a proposal with, how many speakers would you potentially put into a proposal, Gina? Do you try for like 3, try for more?
Normally, I go for my top 3 picks.
Okay.
So, but in order to get to those 3 picks, I might need to interview 6 or 7 speakers in a given couple of hours.
Right.
So, yeah.
And you're going to funnel that down. Okay. So that's really good to know, is that, so you'll be reaching out to 6 or 7 speakers in order to put together a list of 3, and you'll be checking dates, you'll be checking fees, you'll be checking best fit. Can you do this? Correct?
Right, exactly.
Right. And your goal is to put the 3 that you feel are going to be the best fit in front of that client. And the reason we don't do 6 or 10 is because, you know what? A confused buyer never buys. And we want to make it simple for them to, for you have the trust build up with your clients, and they say, okay, well, I've worked with Gina before, and I believe that she's putting the best 3 options in front of me. And sometimes you might have to do another 3 later on, but really that's the goal, is to get the best 3 right out of the chute. So let's make it easy for her to get you by phone, and let's turn that call around really, really quickly if you are on the road or speaking, because she's got an urgent need, and you may go right off the list if she doesn't hear from you within 24 hours.
Yeah, that's definitely going to happen. And, you know, more the busier speakers get, the more urgent it becomes for them also to hire somebody. So if you can't, you know, if you can't be the person who actually takes the call, that's fine. It's more than acceptable to have somebody on the ground who's your backup person, who's familiar with your program, understands your fees, has current information about you, and can take the call and check your calendar.
You know
So,
what? That is such a good point that you're making. And I've talked to my clients about the most important thing is going to become team once you get busy. And if you're a speaker who may be losing business because you can't keep all the balls in the air, that's the exact moment to be hiring someone on the ground to take the calls for you. And they don't have to be able to answer every question, but they do need access to your calendar. So that's a really good point you just gave up. Okay.
yeah, the 3 things, yeah, and I guess I would say to that for new speakers, you know, what are the 3 most important things that you need to train your person on? First of all, you need to make sure that your calendar is up to date. Second of all, you need to make sure that your fee structure is quoted as gross fee, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit.
Okay.
And then also, you need to make sure that that person is armed with sort of an overview of your programs and what the objectives of those programs are, what the takeaways are, so that's kind of sort of concisely
Help them
printed out somewhere on a one sheet. Yeah. And then to the extent that you have some testimonials from a certain industry that the meeting planner or that the bureau agent may be calling about, let's say it's agriculture,
Okay.
be able to have those things organized so that your executive assistant can quickly just send that stuff out, because that's also very helpful in getting you booked. If a meeting planner can look and say, oh wow, look, this speaker has spoken to 6 agribusiness conferences in the last 3 years, and wow, look at these reviews, this is great. So that helps a lot.
So they need to understand how to close, how you close your deals, and what all the things that you can put in front of the clients might be to help.
And I think, yeah, exactly. And I think that goes to kind of understanding how speakers bureaus work. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. We are trying to put that speaker's best foot forward and eliminate any concern the meeting planner might have that speaker is a fit.
Right.
And so everything that the speaker can do to help us do that, that's part of how the partnership works, and that's what makes it really successful. And I have some speakers who are really good at that.
Awesome. Awesome. So if you're calling me and I manage a speaker, I'm going to say, oh, you have an insurance event. You know what? He or she just did this one, and this one. Let me share with you some testimonials. And if you need some phone numbers, I can provide that for you. And let me check the date. Yep, the date's free. Let's confirm the price. Yep, the price is free is ready. Let's go. So we're able to just kind of check off all the boxes really, really quickly. And the more you work with bureaus, you know that you're trying to give them tools that will help sell you. And I have some clients who are really bureau ready in lots of ways, but they're not bureau ready in their video and their website yet. So we haven't made that leap yet. So we want to make sure that when you're sending the client to that speaker's website, that they're going to be able to see a video that is really, really solid. When you say that the video is the tipping point for almost every client?
The video is huge, and I can't begin, there's two components that are absolutely essential to being a successful speaker. One is the investment in the website, and two is the investment in the video. And the sooner the better. And no, until you have your website and your video nailed, you really are not really ready to start marketing yourself through bureaus.
Okay.
Because I think, the number one barrier to booking, in order to be successful, you need to remove the barriers to booking. And the number one barrier to booking in any scenario is uncertainty. So if there's anything about your marketing materials, whether it's your website or your video, that could possibly plant a seed of uncertainty in the meeting planner's mind, you need to identify that and remove it. And two of the things are, out of date looking websites that aren't very functional, and, video that's either, poorly done or really outdated.
And
neither one of those things helps the speaker.
And because you've booked so many speakers, let's talk about, people might be at home thinking, oh man, I got to spend $10,000 to get a video. How many times have you booked a speaker based on just 2 or 3 minutes of live platform video unedited?
It is not necessary to spend $10,000 on video in order to make your video relevant. You oftentimes, what meeting planners want is to see the speaker speaking in front of an audience in a real scenario. So, having the slick video is great. And I think it is an important piece of marketing because it does sort of instill a little bit of emotion into the buying process and confidence that, gee, this speaker really is committed to their speaking program.
Yep.
But my clients, what they really fundamentally want to see is, what does that speaker sound like when they're on a stage? Do they constantly stand behind the podium? Do they have some, little idiosyncrasies where they, use or ah or too many pauses? Do they look nervous? So, I have actually had a couple of speakers who've just recorded themselves with their iPhones. I don't recommend that, but as a better than no video at all.
Right.
They've done that, and then they've just had to tweak a little bit, and that's what they've posted. Better to have that than not at all. But I think, some investment in video is important. Definitely.
Let's put in the show notes. I'm talking to my assistant who will run the show notes on this. Let's put in the show notes the link to the Chris West podcast, because we actually share all of the equipment that you might need if you did just want to shoot some yourself, so that you could have something. And just know that as your price goes up, your investment and all of this will go up. And when you're sitting at $15,000 for a speech, you want to have a good, well-produced demo video. But if you're sitting at $5,000, then perhaps it's not nearly as important. Let's talk about that for a second in terms of budgets. You and I, you were lovely enough to gracious my VIP client party in Dallas at NSA with your presence. And I was watching the faces of everyone in the room when I asked you what are the average budgets that you're working with for speakers. And so let's just talk in terms of the average fee that you might book first, and then we'll get to budget. So let's talk about, on a day-to-day basis, what are you seeing mostly on average through your bureau?
Well, for my client base, for a keynote speech, a lot of my keynotes are in the 20 to 25,000 range. I have a few that are in the 15,000 range for keynotes. I have a number of clients who book session speakers at somewhere between 5 and 75.
Okay, so I want everybody to hear that you're talking about breakout slots for $500 to $7,500, that even in those positions, there's a fee, and $20,000 to $25,000 for keynotes. I know this is going to
Right.
surprise people who are always hearing, we don't have the budget for you. Let's talk about like whole budgets. So, because you're probably providing more than one speaker for a lot of them. What's one of the
Yes.
bigger budgets that you might have seen lately?
Well, the biggest budget that I've seen lately for speakers was $150,000.
Yeah, 150K.
150K.
So,
Even the smaller companies, private companies that I work with that do once a year conferences, they probably have a budget of somewhere between 50 and 60 for speakers.
okay, fair enough. So
Yeah.
I just really want people to feel more confident that the fees are out there. And if they're hearing we don't have the budget, just know that you need to be kind of looking up the ladder for your clients because you may not be in the right industry. Okay, so let's talk about e-speakers. I know you're a fan of e-speakers, and I know that that's very helpful for people who are working with bureaus to update their e-speakers, and then that update goes out to all the bureaus that they are picked up by. Talk about that a little bit.
Right. Well, for any new speaker, and for any speaker really, not to necessarily give a plug for e-speakers, but that is sort of the premier marketplace for professional speakers. Not every speaker is on eSpeaker. I checked my directory this morning, and as of today, there are 13,000 speakers publishing on the eSpeaker platform. The thing that's beneficial for speakers, and one of the reasons why they need to consider listing themselves on directories, is because, as a meeting planner, no meeting planner is aware of the universe of speakers. My goodness, the market is flooded. Same thing goes for bureaus. And we are always looking for new talent, or we're looking for speakers that we may not know about. So speakers who list themselves in these directories, that's one of the go-to places for both meeting planners and also, I would say, for a lot of bureaus. There are some speakers bureaus who represent or have on their website a slate of speakers that they work with regularly. But even those bureaus, if the people that are in their immediate database are not necessarily a fit, or they want to look outside of that, eSpeaker is usually the number one place where they go. And eSpeaker does a lot in the industry in terms of networking with both, bureaus and the International Association of Speaker Bureaus, also with NSA.
Right.
So it's just it's a good marketing tool to keep in your arsenal.
But the important part is to keep your e-speakers updated. I think a lot of people will set it up when they first, so if you're a member of NSA or CAPS, our Canadian version, Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, you sometimes, I believe, will get a free e-speakers account. And so you might set it up when you first get it, and then you might forget about it. So the important thing is to keep it up to date, wouldn't you say?
Well, yes, absolutely. And, the free version, I don't think allows you to upload video, at least here, the eSpeaker version in the United States.
Okay.
And so that's where I would say, if you're well, again, if you want to work with bureaus or if you want to get booked, one of the barriers to booking is that uncertainty, and one of the tools that help close that gap is video. So if you're going to be on a platform like eSpeaker or any of these others, upload video. Very, very important, because what happens if you don't upload video, and a meeting planner or a bureau comes along and they look at your profile, you're forcing that person to spend an extra amount of time to go to YouTube or Vimeo or someplace else and try to hunt for your video. Well, guess what? Time is money for all of us, and most people are not going to do that. They're going to pass on to the speaker who does have video.
Right.
So that comes back to being effective in marketing. So a couple of things I would say are very important on the eSpeaker platform or any other platform that you decide to subscribe to.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that you have some video.
Okay.
Make sure that you have a profile of your content, whatever.
Your
if you have 2
talks.
programs or 3
Okay.
programs, your talks,
Yep.
and what the takeaways are.
All right.
In a nutshell, nothing elaborate. And then also getting to fees and working with speakers bureaus, and this kind of takes us into a whole different conversation about fee integrity, but
Okay.
I can't tell you how many speakers list their net fees on eSpeaker, and particularly these are speakers who are not necessarily what I would call professional speakers. They may be authors, they may be university professors,
Mm-hmm.
but they're on that platform, and the fee that they list is not their gross fee. So in other words, that fee is not a commissionable fee.
Okay.
It's very important to pick a fee that you can live with, and that's the fee that you use on eSpeaker or any other
Okay.
platform for that matter.
So let's run this scenario. Speakers bureaus mostly do a 25% commission, would you say, fairly across the board?
That's pretty much the standard.
With
Yes.
the odd 30, okay. So let's say your fee that you want to charge to the end user client is $10,000. And then there's a $2,500 commission on that that's going to go to the Speakers Bureau. That means that your net fee is $7,500. If I call you as a Speakers Bureau, or if a client calls you directly, everybody should be getting quoted same fee. So it shouldn't matter. What I'm trying to say is it shouldn't matter who the client calls, you or the bureau. Everyone should be quoting the same fee. And it's when a client is hearing that they can get it lower from the speaker directly, that's a big problem for you all in the Speakers Bureau business, because they're undercutting you, and that's not going to work.
Right, exactly. And a lot of speakers don't do that on purpose. They're not doing it to try and undercut the bureau necessarily. Mm-hmm. These would be speakers who just don't understand the bureau business. And so when they set themselves up on eSpeaker, they just put in, okay, well, I'm going to go out to speak and I need to collect $5,000 for my speaking fee. And they don't think about the fact that a bureau may be looking at that profile. So yeah, you definitely don't, as a professional speaker, if you want to work with bureaus on a regular basis, the big no-no is don't undercut your fee, or don't have one fee for meeting planners and another fee for bureaus. You have to understand how that partnership works. But also just understand that bureaus work off of commission, and be sure when you set that fee up in eSpeaker, you're thinking about that. Is this going to be enough for me to go out and speak if I am picked up by a bureau, or if I'm part of a proposal that's successful by a bureau?
Yeah, it's a tricky thing to walk, but we really want to make sure that everybody's quoting the same fee, and you are the one that's going to pay the commission to the bureau. And why do you feel grateful for that bureau? Is that the client that you wouldn't have had otherwise? Now, back in the day, that was way more true. Anybody can search you and find you on Google now. So let's say, Gina, you put me out. I'm speaker Joe Smith, and you've submitted me to Prudential Insurance. And then, so I place a hold for you. And that's smart for you to come in and say, hey, just letting you know, Joe, I have put you in for Prudential Insurance. Then Prudential tries to call me directly. I can then protect you and say, hey, I want you to know that the client has come to me directly.
Right. I would say that seldom happens. Most of the time when a bureau is working between a speaker and a client, the bureau is working based off of a relationship with the meeting planner. And one of the reasons meeting planners use bureaus is because of all of the thousands of details that are necessary for a meeting planner. or the director of education or whoever it might be that's in charge of booking speakers. Finding that speaker and getting that speaker in place is just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
So, there's a variety of reasons why they're working with the Bureau. So seldom do they pick up the phone, but there are those rare occasions where you'll have a CEO who's a real stickler for detail who just might instruct his meeting planner or her meeting planner to say, hey, call up that speaker and see if we can get a better price.
Yep, exactly.
And
they
when that
think
happens,
they can negotiate more.
Yeah, that's always sort of an underlying question, especially in today's age with, as you said, with access to the internet. It's so easy. So it's always an underlying question with meeting planners, and it's always something that can come up. And so that's why it's really important. I always tell my speakers, look, if you want to negotiate your fee, which I don't think you should, but if you do want to, you can come up with a reason to negotiate if you're not working through another bureau. But you should have your fee set at what your fee is, and that's what you should quote. Everybody's quoting the same.
Amen,
it's
sister.
very important.
Amen. We want people to stand tall in their fees. And I think it's the people who are negotiating on a regular basis who are setting up the clients to believe that everything is negotiable. So if everybody, this is collusion in the most positive way. Let's everybody just stick to the darn fee, and then we're not going to have this problem nearly as much. And I do have to say that there are times when a bureau agent will get it in its head that, I have a low fee engagement. Here's my go-to speaker. And we need to teach people how to treat us and not to expect us to be negotiating all the time either.
Right. Exactly.
So we've kind of covered off fee integrity, but let's also talk about kind of the spin factor. I have some clients who are really, really busy with bureau business, and they track it very vigilantly. But sometimes it gets really tricky and convoluted because a spinoff comes, but it's with a different bureau and another bureau originated, and so that gets very, very convoluted. I have always said that the tie goes to whoever the client wants to work with. Right? I mean, let's just be clear. A spinoff realistically is when you set up, let's say, Gina, your bureau has set up the original event, and then 2 or 3 engagements come from that event. They might not even play, or happen for like a year or 2 later. Really, that contract should come through you. The next contract, yes?
Yes, that's what spin is. Sometimes we'll have a speaker who gets 2 or 3 pieces of spin from that immediate engagement, but oftentimes it may be a year or 2 before something comes around again. And so I would say, sometimes spin does get a little hard to track, and it gets crazy. And in all fairness, sometimes you may book a speaker and never book that speaker again, and 5 years later something comes along, and should you give that back to the bureau? I have speakers who are very, very, very cognizant about that, and will do it. It really boosts your standing in the business world, in our world, if you do that. The more integrity you can demonstrate, the more bookable you become. But so spin is definitely something to be concerned with. The bigger problem, I think, is in some speakers tend to adopt a very negative attitude about bureaus. And one of the things they'll say is that, working with a bureau, I don't work with bureaus because they take 25% of my fee. That's absolutely not true. We find an engagement that speaker wouldn't necessarily ever know about, and we put them in as an opportunity to build that relationship. And so we reach out in the spirit of partnership. So we are a partner. So just like with any business partner, if you and I go into business together, Jane, and we have income that's coming into the business, you're not going to take all that income to the exclusion of me, and vice versa. And so that's sort of what a relationship with the bureau has to be. If you want to be successful in working with bureaus, you have to realize that it's a partnership. So your job in working with the Bureau is to show up on time, ready, do a great job, meticulously keep track of the spend that you get, continue to give some feedback to that Bureau, reach out to them periodically with some ideas, keep yourself in front of them in a positive way with, this is where I'm speaking, come and see me speak. These are some of the clients that I've been working with lately. Maybe this will give you some ideas. But if you stay in touch with the Bureau, a lot of the spin issues is going to go away because you're sort of continuing to communicate. And these situations that come up with, maybe another client was in the audience who does business with a different Bureau, you'll work that out. It's either, sometimes bureaus will split the commission together. A lot of times we do, or we'll co-broker, or, like you said, it's going to end up being the client's decision in terms of who they want to do business with.
Sure.
Honestly, that doesn't happen all that often.
Good.
It hasn't happened in my world all that often. So, but yes, spin is very important.
I think you hit on one of the really big keys. It's just communication. Keep people in the loop on what's going on.
Absolutely.
If you're getting a call from a client that is a spin, just make sure that the Bureau knows that, hey, I just got this call and this is happening. I'll keep you posted as to what goes on. Let's circling back to kind of where we started our conversation today as a final question. We talk about fresh faces. Are there any kind of things that you think are, and I really don't encourage clients to chase whatever's hot, so just know that I'm not saying change your topic to meet this. Are there any things that you might be constantly looking for in terms of fresh faces? I remember before, female business speakers were always kind of hard, really strong keynoters were always really, really hard to come by. What are some of the things that you're kind of always on the look for?
Well, I think in today's marketplace, adding value and creating a sense of experience for the participants are the two number one things that meeting planners are looking for.
Okay.
So, speakers who sort of set themselves up as experts in their area, and take the time to either do the research or come from a place of experience in a particular field are very important, because that's, a lot of times that's what the client is looking for. They're looking to bring somebody up who is an expert in, let's say, the U.S. economy and foreign trade. And so that's going to be a speaker who either comes from a place of having worked in that field or currently is in that field, or has done some research, so they're quite credible. I'm seeing a trend kind of going away from the more just sort of, I hate to use the word generic, but just purely motivational.
Okay. It's got to be motivation with a message, maybe?
Motivation with a message. Yeah. Motivation with a message. Leaving the audience with a piece of information that they wouldn't have otherwise.
Okay.
So great. I think that's really important. I will also say that, one of the other things that's going on too in terms of meeting planning is the whole issue of gender equality in terms of picking the slate of speakers. So to your question about, female business speakers, in terms of female business speakers, yes, absolutely. We still continue to need more women in the world, but now diversity. But now we're also looking at issues, transgender issues. Do we have an equal mix there? And the larger the company and the more high profile the company that you're dealing with, or the association, the more that becomes relevant. So I guess, it kind of boils down to more than that. The most fundamental thing is making sure that your content is relevant and that your brand is your brand. So whatever it is that you do, whatever it is that you speak on, you are crystal clear that that's what you speak about. And you are an expert and an authority in that subject. Even if it's a motivational speaker, Even if you're a motivational speaker, there's an element of psychology there.
Love it.
And because you know how to fire up an audience, you know how to speak to that audience, and you know how to command their attention. So,
I love it.
It's your lane. It's your lane. It's your brand. Branding is so important right now because with, I think the universe of professional speakers right now is somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30,000.
There's a lot of people. Yeah.
Consistently. It's flooded. And so branding, and you're not going to be all things to all people. Branding is essential.
What? Are you saying we need to pick a lane? Oh no. Okay, that's great. You're emphasizing things that we talk about on this show all the time. Gina, thank you so much for taking time away from your clients and being with us today.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Favorite bureaus, and we love to provide you with fresh faces in our client base. So you let me know when you're looking for something that you don't have. I love filling in the holes.
I appreciate that, Jane. You are my go-to person. Thank you so much.
Awesome. And with that, we will say, if you've enjoyed this episode, let us know. Shoot me a line, jane@speakerlauncher.com, and let me know if it was valuable to you. And with that, we will say, see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Wealthy Speakers Show. Please visit speakerlauncher.com for your free Wealthy Speaker audit, and visit speakerlauncher.com/podcast for show notes and many more resources to help you catapult your speaking business. See you soon, Wealthy Speakers.